Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. I just wanted to share a quick video with you today. I saw this on YouTube and I'll put a link to the video I watched in the description box. But it's basically making up a sheet of paper using your scraps. So I made a whole heap of these, and from those sheets I have made these here. So I've got these just offcuts that I've put into ruffles, but I've made some envelopes. These ones I stitched around each one of those scrap bits. I'm not that keen on that look, so I'm probably not going to do that anymore. I made this sort of little coin pocket and envelopes. So I've got lots and lots of envelopes. This is probably the style I prefer the best. I've just stitched around the edge of the envelope once. Now, with making scraps, you don't always know what you're going to get on the inside of your envelope, so that can be a bit tricky. But yeah, if you're worried about it, you could always put some pattern paper in there. So this one here, I've got some of that mulberry paper. I've got some baking paper here. These are some papers that I made using various metallic products. This is some metallic paper. This green paper I made on my jelly plate. So as you can see, I've just used these sheets that I've made. So this one here, probably more like that, where it's got a lot more assortment of papers. And so there we have, I've got an assortment of all different sizes. Here's another sort of little, that type of envelope. And this one I haven't sealed it up because I might put that into the centre of a signature stitch in there and then stick it down. So I've left that one. But I thought that I would just give you a quick idea of how I did it, how I created these sheets. So I just, what I've done is I've torn all the edges of these papers, and I actually used my decal rule to do that. But you can tear it by hand, of course. This piece is probably a bit too big, so I'm just going to tear like that, and maybe a smaller piece like that. And then I'm going to just use my ink pad and just ink all, well, I've inked all the edges of all the papers. I'll just do these quickly now. So that as I'm going to put them together, I don't have to worry about doing all these little bits of odds and ends. So I'll start pretty simply. So just, I'm using art glitter glue. You can use any sort of glue. Let's attach one to the other. So you just run a bead of glue along one edge and then attach that to the previous piece. And I keep a tissue handy so that any of these pieces that are longer, I can just wipe the glue off. Pretty messy job, really. And then this one I'm going to attach there. You can decide which ones you want up and down, like whether you want to put this one on top of that one or the other one under it. Then we might go for something like this. And I'll put that under there. So I just lay that down on that like so. Don't want to get out of camera there. I'll try and keep a reasonably sort of straight edge there. And something in here that I've got some more of that, well, this is a different one, but a piece of mulberry paper. So I'll just run that around there like that, and around here, and then pop that down on top of that. So again, we got glue that we don't want there. And then I just work my way across doing this same sort of thing. So I'll put some glue there, a bit there. Oh, I don't want to put there. So down there like so. Turn it over, wipe the excess glue off. And keep building like that. So I'll go ahead and do some more of these, and I'll do it on fast forward, and I'll come back to you when I have got my sheet all stuck together. Now, when you're creating your sheet, you're going to probably, if you're going to make envelopes, you want square, something pretty square, and you probably don't want it that big. This is almost 12 inches by about, what, 10 and a half, so you don't really need it this big, but I may as well extend that out a bit and get nearly to a 12-inch. To a 12-inch square. Because once you cut your square out of this to make your envelope, you can always then, you know, use your offcuts to make, you know, other things, those other little envelopes, or a ruffle, or any of those sorts of things. So there we have our new sheet of pattern paper, and it's just all made up of scraps. So I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes so that it stays in place, and I'm going to get my trimmer and I will trim this down so it's nice and square. Now, to make my envelopes, I use the punch board, and let's say if I use a 6x6 piece of pattern paper, let's say what size envelope will we make? Well, let's make a 3.5 by 4 inch envelope. So we need a piece of paper 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So I start off by cutting one edge straight. Well, let's say it's straight. So that's a straight edge. Now I want to cut this edge straight because this is the edge I'm going to measure to. So I cut down there, making sure that I've got that in there nice and level, and cut that off. So now I can move this across, and what did I say I wanted? 6.5. I think I said 6.5. Memory like a sieve. So down there, and then I'm going to, I may as well just cut straight through, I think. That's 6.5. Go on there. And go this way, 6.5. Go that way, 6.5. Okay. Cut that off a little. Because I'm going to make an envelope, and if I cut it from this one, that mulberry paper is right on the edge, so it might not be very sturdy for an envelope. So if I cut it here at 6.5, I've got a fairly solid piece. Got a little bit of mulberry paper there, but there you go. So now I'm going to do my, you can see on the inside it's a bit messy, and you know that's going to show on the opening flap, but we can have a look at that shortly. So what did I say? 6.5. So 2 3/4 inches. So put this on the 2 3/4 inch edge. This comes with a scorer, but I like this one better, so I'm going to use this one. This comes in my scoreboard. So 2 3/4 inches, punch and score. So because of the varying thicknesses of the paper that you've created, you'll need to be careful when you're doing the scoring. You line this little nose piece up with the score line that you just done. Then you press and score once again. And then we do that all the way around. You have to sort of get it in the right light because that score line is a bit hard to see at times. If you're using plain cardstock or something like that to make your envelope, it's pretty easy to see the score line, but if you're using any sort of pattern paper, it can be a bit tricky. Oh, something wrong there. There is something wrong there. Oh, well, we can fix that up as we go. We'll fix that up as we go. And I also like to round my corners. Okay. So now we're going to fold on our score lines. And you really need to burnish these quite firmly. Because of all the layers, they can be a bit hard to fold. And that's where our little boo-boo is, so what I'm going to do is cut that off. Once again, it's really hard to see that score line. I'm just going to cut that out. Hopefully it won't be too noticeable. So there. So before I put all of that together, I will ink the edge. Just helps the folds to stand out and Gives it a bit more of that vintage charm. Okay, now decide which one I want for the top. I haven't fold that one down. So what do I want for the top? That or that? I think that. So ink the inside of this one. So that's the inside of my flat. I'm quite happy with that. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not going to worry about covering that up. Okay, so now the blue and a bit down there, a bit down there, there, and a bit there. Not sure how far up that comes, not all the way. I'm going to push that down. So we can hold that in place for a few seconds, or you can put something heavy on it just for a few seconds while it dries. Doesn't take long to dry this art glitter glue. And you want it to take a long time to dry. It doesn't, it dries straight away, but when you want it to dry straight away, not always the case. Anyway, I reckon that's dry enough. So there we have it. We have our little envelope made with a bunch of scraps, and it looks very cute. So actually I'm going to try and round that off a bit so it looks a bit more like the other side. Okay, now I would take this to my sewing machine, sew all the way around the edge of it. You don't need to, it looks perfectly fine the way it is. You can use it like any envelope. You can stick it to a page flat down, you can stick it down 2 sides with a tuck behind, you can stick 3 sides, pocket, whatever you like. You could put you know, a fastener on there if you wanted to. So that's a little pocket made with your scrap papers. Now we've got a whole heap of stuff left here. We can make something out of. What should we make out of this? How big is it? It's 4 3/4 inches on its narrowest side. Can we make another tiny envelope? No, 5 inches is the smallest. Okay, so we can make a little pocket. If we fold that over, crease that down, fold it. And then we can fold this one over, crease that down, and if we score, open that out and score along here, say I'll say 3/8 of an inch. That can come up will be our bottom section. Cut those pieces out. It's better if you cut that actual fold line out. And then we can round the corners on that. No, we can't. We'll just cut them on an angle. Then we will, so we got that. And before we do that, I might just get a punch and a punch. I don't know how well this is going to go going into that paper there. Unfortunately, my camera cut out just here, and I didn't end up showing you how I put this together, but all I did was run some glue along the two edges, the inside edges of where the paper overlapped the other, and then glued the bottom up. You will see the finished article at the end of the video. Now I'm just straightening up the edge of the paper that I have left over. That edge up somewhat, and I'm going to cut a strip here. I'm going to make a ruffle. I've got one there that I think is a bit too wide, and I think this one's a bit thin, so I'm going to try and do one somewhere in between, so about an inch. So cut the strip that's an inch, and then I'm going to crease that up. So just starting from the bottom, I just don't have any rhyme nor reason, just start with what I think, and then move up a bit and do the same thing. Fold it back, fold it forward. So we're ending up with like a Z. Try and make it straight, although that is not compulsory. If you want it to be straight, well then make sure it's straight before you do your burnishing. Actually, with all these layers on here, it can be a bit tough to fold, especially if you've got arthritis in your fingers like I have. It can be a bit tricky to handle. But anyway, I'm going to work my way up through there, and then I would take this to my sewing machine as well and stitch up through that. Generally when I'm making ruffles like this, I mean generally when I'm making them, this is probably the first ones I've ever made, so that's not much. I will generally do like a zigzag up the middle instead of a straight stitch, but you can do a straight stitch, or if you don't want to sew, you can also just use your glue to stick it down. We just work our way up all the way like that. You can also make these with fabric if you want to. whether you sew or glue, doesn't make any difference. You can use ribbon. So I'm pretty new to all this junk journal type things, so I'm just learning as I go. And as I said, I saw this paper making thing on YouTube. The one I watched first was by Paper Inspirations, but she said that she'd seen it by Corey somebody, so I went and had a look at hers as well. So I will link them in the description box so you can go and see how the experts do it. I think I'm just going to cut that off because it's too much of a hassle. Okay, so there we have a little what do you call them? That one's come a bit undone there. See, with the scraps I don't necessarily glue right to the end, so that will happen from time to time. So yeah, so I'm going to just sew along there, and I'll come back and show you the ones that I finished tonight, just so you can see how they look when they're done. So there we have it. With this ruffle I decided I'd do a couple of rows of straight stitching as well. Trim your cottons a bit shorter or leave them longer, or however you like them to be. So yeah, that's a cute little ruffle. Now I'd probably ink along the edges. You could actually ink before you stitch, so you could ink along all of those ridges, all of those folds. The other thing you do, of course, too, if you wanted a more uniform ruffle, is to score it on your scoreboard and then fold it up. So that's the ruffle. So the little pocket, I've stitched around this one. I'll trim those right off, I think. Don't want them poking around up the top there, they'd get in the way when we want to put things in there. So yeah, so that one's got, this is the back of course, that one's got the stitching all around. Now with the stitching it does sort of reduce the size of your pocket or envelope slightly, but not enough to be too worried about, I don't think. You can always make something to fit in there anyway. And there's the envelope with the stitching around the edge. I haven't stitched anything in here, of course. So I might leave the cottons a bit longer on this one. So there we have it. So there are some of the things that you can do with your scraps, and I've still got this left as well. So I can make perhaps another pocket, or I could make a belly band out of it or something like that. Plenty of things you can make with it. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and get your scraps out. I know I have got plenty of them, so I'm sure everybody else has too. So yeah, make your own pattern paper. Very easy to do, and yeah. Anyway, well, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll give this a try, and give me a like, a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video, and if you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel, and I hope you can join me for my next video.